Welcome everyone to the elevator pitch session number 8. I'm excited to be moderating this session at the 7th Polygent Symposium of Rising Scholars. My name is Amaya Weddle, and I am one of the Polygent's mentors, and I'll be moderating today's session. Just a reminder, the goal of the symposium is to celebrate and showcase the hard work of the Polygent scholars, all of whom have tirelessly worked on their project over the past couple of months. We have 7 students presenting on a variety of topics today, and a fellow member of our Polygent's team will be scoring each student's presentation, which will help us determine prize winners after the event. If you're joining today and you have any questions, go ahead and pop them in the Q&A because at the end of the overall presentations, we'll have some time to ask various students questions about their projects. Okay, so today's speakers we're starting today with Mayank Banerjee. We also have Yusef, Torky. We have Srisamarth Kolnati, Sandra Srinivasan, Kameron, Pham, and Nilesh Kumar. So we're going to go ahead and get started with number 1 person on the list, which is, let me just double check. We're going to start with Mayank. So Mayank, you can go ahead and turn on your camera and let us know more about your project.
Hi, am I audible?
Yes, you're sounding great.
All right, thank you. So the purpose of my research was to determine whether a space shuttle can withstand a perpendicular launch from Mars. Should I share my screen?
Go right ahead.
All right.
You're looking great.
Yeah, my computer's lagging a little bit, sorry. Could you give me a minute? My computer's not responding.
No problem.
Yeah, sure, thank you. All right. So my name is Mayank Banerjee, and the topic of my research is to determine whether a space shuttle can withstand a perpendicular launch from Mars. So why should a space shuttle be able to launch from Mars? Well, in the near future, when scientists and astronauts will be collecting data from Mars, we need to ensure that these interplanetary journeys are safe. So astronaut safety will be paramount, and these interplanetary journeys must be fault tolerant. How do we know that the space shuttle will launch safely? Well, the total force applied on the space shuttle must not exceed 3 Gs of force, which is 3 times the gravitational force on Earth. Well, suppose the external forces exceeded that. Well, that would mean that the spacecraft would collapse and be crushed from all of these external forces. And we definitely don't want that. What are the different forces being applied on the spacecraft? We have the drag force, the gravitational force, and the thrust force. The drag force is basically the amount of air resistance that is being applied against the space shuttle. The gravitational force is the gravitational force of Mars being applied against the spacecraft. And the thrust force is the opposing force that the spacecraft applies against the drag force and the gravitational force. The total force can be calculated through this equation. It's equal to the thrust force minus the gravitational force minus the drag force. The different layers of the Martian atmosphere are the troposphere, the mesosphere, the thermosphere, and the exosphere. In my calculations, I found out that the atmosphere of Mars is so thin that the space shuttle exits the atmosphere within the first stage of launch. Well, surprisingly enough, this means that we can save a ton of fuel when it comes to launching. So I had to calculate the final force at the top of every layer and compare it to 3Gs of force. Results. In figure 2, we can see the individual forces that are being compared with each other. So to put into perspective how strong these forces are, although the drag force is around a few 100,000 newtons, it is negligible compared to the gravitational force and the thrust force. Figure 3 compares the total force with 3Gs of force. So I found out that the total force was 80% lower than 3Gs in the troposphere, 78% lower in the mesosphere, 69% lower in the thermosphere, and 68% lower in the exosphere. Conclusions. From this observation, a lot of fuel can be saved since a spacecraft exits the atmosphere in stage 1 with ease. In fact, the size of the 2 fuel tanks can also be decreased as it won't need much fuel. The conclusions derived may have the potential to save a lot of money when it comes to manufacturing and producing more of these rockets. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mayank. That was great. I love the passion that you spoke with about your project. Okay, so next we have Sri up. So Sri, are you ready to jump in with your presentation?
Yeah. So I don't have a presentation. So is it okay if I just start speaking?
Absolutely. It's an elevator pitch, so you just do whatever you'd like.
Okay. For thousands of years, cultures across the globe have been using traditional medicines to fight the never-ending war against ailments and diseases. Cultures such as Greece, China, India, even Aboriginal Australia and the Americas have been using traditional medicine for decades. What we have come to call traditional medicine has been a combination of natural products of the environment and indigenous traditions, often covering a myriad of maladies, particularly those that affect the populations from which we get these practices. Recently, more and more research has been done on the topic of how these traditional medicines work and whether they could be used to treat modern pestilences. However, inconsistent results plague this field of research. Several studies performed on compounds found through researching medical journals were unstable between compounds, while some medicines like Artemisia annua used in traditional Chinese medicine to cure malaria are widely accepted and adopted into drug form. Others have varying results, such as kava kava, a plant endemic to Oceania and still in use across the South Pacific. To indigenous peoples, kava kava was used for its spiritual significance as an anesthetic and analgesic. However, opposingly, many Western medical associations have said that it is deleterious to health and causes liver damage. One reason I propose for these inconsistencies is because of a failure on the part of Western research to include a holistic view of these natural products and their effects on the body. Almost all of the research currently being done on the matter has focused solely on the body and fails to consider the spirituality of the matter, excluding any mention of the soul. I propose that this is a mistake in my paper and the potential for us to learn from this medicine through a holistic review is quite prominent. Some ways where we can measure how significant this change would be is through patient satisfaction. And by considering this, I hypothesize that many new doors will be open to us in the use of modern medicine, as we are able to broaden our view when analyzing these natural products to include a holistic process. Thank you for listening. And I'd like to take a moment and acknowledge the contributions of my mentor and thank him for his work. Thank you.
Thank you, Sri. That was very interesting. This is a great topic, so I can't wait to ask you some questions in the Q&A. Okay, Kameron, are you ready?
Yes, hold on. Need to. Give me a moment. Is it okay if I stand?
Absolutely. We can still see you, although you're a little bit floating. So you come a little closer. There you go. Perfect. That's great.
All right, so now imagine there was a way to control real estate while letting all of the professionals do the hard work of managing it while you reap the benefits. Investing into REITs makes that possible. Hello, I'm Kameron Pham, a freshman in high school, and I wrote a research paper which will discuss the process of analyzing as well as creating REITs. I'm going to give you a quick rundown of what my research paper will discuss. REITs are the acronym for Real Estate Investment Trusts and are companies that invest into real estate to generate majority of their income. REITs can be invested into through the same way as stocks, through the stock market. REITs tend to pay higher dividends or quarterly payments made to shareholders since they're required to distribute at least 90% of their income to shareholders. My paper will analyze a randomly picked REIT called American Homes for Rent. Furthermore, I will dive into the advantages and disadvantages of investing into REITs, as well as why people invest into them. This paper will cover the two types of investing, direct and indirect investing. Factors such as vacancy rates and geographical factors which affect an investment portfolio will also be discussed. I will also explain dividends within REITs and the yield for AMH. Leverage or usage of debt is an important tool to help expand an investment portfolio. However, it's a two-edged sword, since it can be beneficial but can harm you if used incorrectly. In addition, this paper will talk about investment horizon, or how long you should hold on to investment for depending on what type it is. There's also going to be a section which describes how to qualify a REIT, create one, as well as manage it through ESG, which is environmental, social, and governance factors. My research will explain how to find the best investment for yourself and important elements of the management portion of a REIT and much more. Thank you, and I hope you consider taking a look at my research paper.
Thank you, Kameron. I love all the diverse projects that we're hearing about today. This sounds very interesting. Okay, next we have Yusef. Yusef, you're up.
Right. Okay, so I wrote a research paper on the future of clean energy, and in specific, the application of newer technologies for energy storage. So why is energy storage important? We're set to face climate challenges that will be detrimental if we continue on our current path. And energy production and use are the main pollutants. So there are two overarching solutions to this problem. The first being to offset our carbon footprint with a positive one, and that's not viable since we currently pollute around 80 trillion pounds of CO2 each year. And then the second is to actually cut the emissions off at the source, and that's what most scientists are working on and what I'll mainly be discussing. Due to the great decrease in solar and wind technologies, they're now both less expensive than burning fossil fuels. Renewable energy production has become much more viable. Yet solar and wind energy still only account for around 3% total of the global energy production. And this really beckons the question of why. And so the main, simply put, we can't use solar and wind energy a lot of the time, and that's because we use them as we need them. So we're either producing a surplus most of the time, or we're not producing enough. So a lot of the time they're obsolete, and so the solution to this is to store that energy. So the main energy storage methods I took a look at through my paper were lithium-ion batteries, pumped hydro, flywheels, methane, energy storage, hydrogen energy storage, redox flow batteries, liquid metal batteries, and gravity storage. And so in the paper I wrote, I had to come up with an effective way to compare these methods, and so I came up with three basic metrics, and those are practicality, which deals with the cost, then density and transfer rate of a system, productivity, which deals with round trip efficiency, and finally sustainability, which deals with materials required, recyclability, and lifespan of the system. And so using these metrics, and after a long comparison, I was able to find that lithium ion batteries, liquid metal batteries, hydrogen, and methane storage would be the best. And this is due to them just being the best in like 90 to 99% of circumstances, but I found that the other 5 or 6 energy storage technologies that I actually looked at would be useful in certain circumstances, but these are going to be the most widespread.
That's it. Thank you. That was a very important topic for society as we move forward. Thank you. Okay, Sandra, you are up.
Hi, my name is Sandra Srinivasan, and I'll be presenting about social anxiety and cyber victimization. So, did you know that due to the pandemic, even with reduced physical and social interaction, suicidal ideation/attempt have only increased due to cyber victimization? The sudden rise of the digital world has affected how social interaction and information are spread between groups. Mental health symptoms such as social anxiety have increased with more social experiences, especially in the digital realm. My name is Sandra Srinivasan, and my proposal provides a background on how social anxiety is affected by different cyber victimization profiles. Cyber victimization and social anxiety is a previously under-researched field, especially among adolescents. Furthermore, the rise of COVID-19 led to complete dependence on the internet for communication, education, work, and news, rather than an in-person climate. As such, social anxiety has spiked from the change. Furthermore, this study will review other research papers and deploy a 3-phase survey. First and foremost, the survey would include targeted questions that would identify the factors that affect their social anxiety. The factors analyzed will be adapted from the LSAS, Leah Bowett's social anxiety scale, and will be used to determine which cluster of characteristics is found in each type of victim. Secondly, the cyber victimization profiles used in this study would be the 3 profiles, one being IPV, intimate partner violence, 2, hate comments, and 3, social exclusion victims. Finally, using a Likert scale from the strongly disagree to agree 1 to 5 scale, we can calculate the data to understand further the social anxiety factors that affect each type of victim. This study expects to see a positive correlation between the type of victim and social anxiety, along with some social anxiety factors peaking depending on the kind of victim. For example, family and friends social anxiety would peak in IPV victims more than in hate comment victims. To elaborate, IPV victims would have more anxiety when meeting family and friends than hate comment victims. These predictions would be able to evaluate the different treatments available, what factors affect each victim, and how better to avoid triggers to a victim's social anxiety. Thank you.
Thank you. This is great. Again, a very timely and important topic. It's really exciting to see all this amazing work you guys have done. Okay, and last we have, unless we've gotten, well, we're still missing somebody, but okay, Nilesh, it's your turn.
Okay, so Hi there, my name is Nilesh Kumar, and for my Polygens project, I wrote a detailed research paper evaluating CRISPR in medicine in regards to the technology, challenges, and approaches in a clinical setting. So what is CRISPR-Cas9? CRISPR-Cas9 is a groundbreaking technology in the field of genetic engineering. Efficiency of edits have increased over 5-fold in comparison to older technologies like TALENs and zinc finger nucleases. It operates using CRISPR-associated proteins known as Cas proteins, which are complexes that serve as molecular scissors, essentially responsible for binding the guide RNA to the appropriate site and cleaving the target DNA. In doing so, the system is able to make precise cuts and ultimately modifications to the genome when a DNA template strand is inserted. CRISPR-Cas9 technology particularly stands out due to its advantages such as easy handling, high accuracy, and low cost. Most concerns stem from the use of CRISPR-Cas9 to genetically alter human germline cells and embryos. This is known as germline genome editing. Germline genome editing leads to serious bioethical issues, such as the occurrence of undesirable changes in the genome from who and how informed consent is obtained, and undesirable changes in the genome. In essence, by removing a disorder like Down syndrome, one's very identity can be altered, in which a plethora of ethical issues arise. There are several ethical implications in somatic cell editing as well, including safety, informed consent, equity, and the value of a human embryo that pose a limit to the means by which the technology can advance. Given the expensive history of gene therapies, it is no doubt that ex vivo methods of gene editing will be just as costly and time-consuming. So there are many clinical trials going on involving CRISPR-Cas9 technologies, which is what I've studied extensively throughout my paper. For starters, sickle cell disease, also known as sickle cell anemia, is being studied extensively. It is a monogenic disease with a single point mutation on chromosome 11, controlling the shape of a hemoglobin cell, causing a crescent-like shape that causes blockages in the bloodstream. Oftentimes, those affected will get severe episodes of pain from the blood blockage, known as crises. The disease is most common in sub-Saharan Africa, where as many as 45% of people are carriers. With a lack of appropriate treatment, the disease has caused an epidemic in the area. The treatment strategy is to genetically modify the BCL11A gene, which is a suppressor of fetal hemoglobin. CRISPR Therapeutics and Vertex Pharmaceuticals, following successful preclinical trials within 2 patients, are running clinical trials as of now to study them. All patients have shown rapid and sustained increases in total hemoglobin after a 3-month follow-up with the dosing of the CTX001 drug. Following such successes in clinical trials, there are many clinical trials studying LCA10, a monogenic inherited retinal disease known to cause blindness or vision loss from early childhood. It has seen success in the clinical setting thus far. LCA10 is one of few already existing gene therapies and is priced at over $850,000. CRISPR-Cas9 could prove to be a much cheaper form of treatment, as the technology is significantly more precise and easier to engineer. Clinical trials have taken place since 2007 utilizing different genetic technologies, but CRISPR-Cas9 trials have only begun in 2019, and phase 1 results have thus shown convincing evidence of successful treatments. Cancer treatments are being studied the most with CRISPR-Cas9 technology, with diseases like lymphoma and leukemia setting precedents for the potential of the technology. Through the utilization of chimeric antigen receptor T-cell immunotherapy, known as CAR-T immunotherapy, T cells are genetically engineered to better attack cancers. 8 clinical trials thus far have shown a largely positive result in patients utilizing the therapy, with phase 2 and phase 3 trials largely underway. Finally, carbon trials through CRISPR Therapeutics are also studying the use of CRISPR-Cas9 in lymphoma and leukemia. Results have shown over a 70% success rate thus far, and phase 2 trials are underway. Overall, CRISPR-Cas9 technologies are being studied extensively and have shown immense promise in many clinical trials across the globe. The potential of the technology is immense, and innovations are likely to only continue in the coming future to increase accuracy and decrease unwanted side effects. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So that is all of the students' presentations. And now I'd love to open it up to Q&A. So if anyone on the line has questions for the students, or students, if you have questions of other students, you can put that into the Q&A, which is, it's along the bottom of your screen. There's a little Q&A bubble, and then you can just drop some questions in. In the meantime, I don't see any questions coming in yet, but I'd love to ask some myself. I'll start with Mayank. You seem to speak about this topic very passionately. I'd love to hear more about, your interest in interplanetary travel and Mars, and kind of where you got the idea for your project.
Sorry, could you repeat? Your voice was cutting.
I'm sorry, I apologize. I was asking, where you got your idea, because it seemed like you're very interested in the topic of interplanetary travel.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I was really fascinated watching all these documentaries and YouTube videos about all these topics. Like, basically, I would watch these videos about these astronauts going to different planets. Like, what would happen if an astronaut went to Venus? What would happen if an astronaut went to Jupiter or Mars? And I thought to myself, like, what would happen if we actually sent a space shuttle over there? Could the space shuttle actually withstand, like, launching from those planets? So like, that's basically where I got my idea from. I thought it was a really fascinating topic, and it really intrigued me.
That's great. Thank you. I also was curious to hear from Sri about your topic, and sort of your interest in indigenous medicines. It's actually something that I looked into when I was in high school, and one of the things that I was curious if you had studied is that I think there's some theory that some of the way these indigenous medicines work is, oftentimes in traditional, or like, I guess, Western medicine, we tend to think that there's one compound that's like the effective ingredient. And so we'll isolate that because there's only, one particular, chemical. But within some of these indigenous medicines, there's the theory that they're actually more effective because of the combination of things that are in the sort of plant environment. There's several chemicals that need to come together in order to be as effective. So you can't necessarily isolate just one. I was wondering if you had heard anything like that, or your thoughts on that matter.
Yeah, so that's actually a very interesting topic. And I feel like that very much coincides with the idea of harmony in several of these indigenous traditions, and traditional medicine itself. A lot of the times, different cultures have a theory of harmony and balance that are central to their idea of medicine. And I feel like that is an extension of that philosophy. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Great. Let's see. Yeah, also, okay, I'm curious to hear from Kameron a little bit more about your interest in your topic, where, it can be so challenging to come up with something that you want to study when you're going through your series of sessions with your mentor. Like, did you know that this was something you were interested in, or where did you get the idea for your project?
So I was going through some articles, like just browsing the internet, going online, and then I read a little about REITs, and I read more about it. It was pretty interesting, and I decided to do research about it. And I got this book about investing in, you probably can't see it.
I can't see it.
It's about investing in
The
REITs.
backgrounds are so weird. We look all strange.
Yeah, I bought a book on investing in REITs, and I read quite a bit of it. It's pretty big, so I couldn't finish it yet, but inspired me to do like research on it. And I also picked American Homes for Rent because it was completely random, but it was also one of the more common types of REITs. So I decided that it would help more people to do a more common type.
That sounds great. Nice. What about, so I'd love to hear from Yusef. I think that it's an interesting journey as a mentor, going through your whole project and experience. Like, I'm curious for your project in particular, what was like one of the hardest challenges you had, and how did you overcome it?
I'd say like the main issue for me was at the very beginning of the process where I was trying to figure out what to do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just a rough idea that I wanted to do something about the environment. And then it really took a lot of research from there. And like I was probably 3 or 4 sessions in with my mentor before I really got solidified on what I wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Tell me more about how you developed your, I guess, your scoring framework.
For oh yeah, so essentially I tried to think of what like, and if we had like a groundbreaking energy storage technology right now, what what characteristics essentially would we want it to have? And from there I was able to derive that, you know, like things like efficiency are important, how much it can store, like all those kinds of things. So yeah.
That's great. Thank you. Really nice project. Sandra, that your project is so timely and relevant. Where did you get the idea, or is this something that you sort of came into the mentor engagement knowing that you wanted to study?
I mean, I did come into it kind of wanting to do something that's related to cybersecurity, because that's been something that I've been interested in since like 7th grade. I've been doing competitions on cybersecurity, and I've been like teaching it to kids on cyber awareness since like 9th grade. So this was like a research project that I feel was very important to me, and it's something that like led to the entirety of cyber victimization and then like more relevance because of COVID-19.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's an interesting twist on cybersecurity, because you're bringing in some of the psychological elements of it. So very nice work. Yeah, and then Nilesh, you had a really fascinating overview of CRISPR, and I think opening some of our eyes to some of the potential applications coming out. I was curious if you had a sense, you know, I was thinking about, as you were describing some of the use cases for CRISPR, like, do you know, like something like sickle cell anemia, are there specific, you know, diseases or ailments that are better candidates for CRISPR, and how does the medical world make a determination about that?
Yeah, so basically there's diseases called monogenic diseases where there's only a single like nucleotide sequence that you have to alter to make a change ultimately. Sickle cell disease is most studied, especially like as a good example of it, because it's one of the most popular monogenic diseases. So making a single point mutation is relatively easy, which is why it's also being studied for other monogenic diseases like LCA10. For other diseases like a lot of cancers, that's obviously the large goal of CRISPR-Cas9 is to cure like cancers and ultimately all diseases. But those are a little more complicated because there's a lot of the sequence that needs to be altered is a lot bigger as opposed to these monogenic diseases, which is why we know it's more safe to alter monogenic diseases because the risk of unwanted mutations is a lot lower.
Yeah, in the patients that they're working with, you know, do they have to intervene at a very early age, like even like embryonic stage, or are they treating adults? Because it seems like there's there would be so many cells that need to get treated. Like, can you tell me more about that?
So yeah, there's multiple ways of going about it. So what we're trying to do is target the stem cells so that it knocks out a bunch of the unwanted genes and then replacing them with the healthy genes. Embryonic germline editing is like considered very unethical and difficult to do, but it would be the most effective And there was actually a study a few years ago which created this huge controversy in which a Chinese scientist, he genetically modified 2 babies and removed AIDS from them. But it created like a huge controversy, and from there they banned all germline editing. So right now there's both in vivo, which is like you get an injection, and then it like replaces a lot of the stem cells, and eventually it'll take time and it'll go through your entire body and knock out the unwanted gene. But then there's also ex vivo, where we take out your stem cells, modify them, and then put them back in.
Great. Well, I just noticed that Simone joined. Simone, I didn't see on the call earlier, and we have some time left. I'm wondering if you'd like to present now. We were just in the Q&A session.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. I was facing like technical difficulties. We have like construction going on, so my Wi-Fi was down.
No problem. It's perfect. You're here, and we'd love to hear from you. So the floor is yours if you're ready to go.
Okay. Is there any chance I can get my, sorry, I'll just begin now. Okay. So I'm Simone Parekh, and my topic is about bilingualism in the brain, what brain areas like affect bilingualism. And the essential question I'm trying to address is, are there multiple areas, like is the area in the brain used for different languages overlapping, or is each part of the brain considered like its own area? So the world has become a global village, and there is diversity not only in terms of human beings, but cultural and language diversity as well. And to be successful in the present day world, it's really important for people to know more than one language for like communication, learning, and business. And actually, surprisingly, monolinguals are the ones in the minority compared to bilinguals. So a long debated question in the scientific community is how exactly to define bilingualism. I've read probably 10 papers like on its own, just attempting to define it itself. And the reason for debate is due to a lot of factors that need to be taken into consideration, like one's skill level in the language, their nativity to the language, their upbringing, and their age. So in my paper, I researched a sequence of topics related to attempting to answer my central question, which was, do bilingual people have double the brain area dedicated to language, or some of the allotted space overlapping? So first, I tried to define bilingualism and monolingualism accurately with, again, all the factors involved and numerous definitions from different articles. Discussed and defined L1, which is language 1, and L2, language 2, and their relativity to bilingualism. Subsequently, I talked about the distinct brain areas involved in language processing, with the hard emphasis on the Broca's area and the Wernicke's area. The Broca's area is important to language processing and production, and the Wernicke's area gives meaning to language and the written word. Then I covered how the monolingual brain interprets languages in comparison to the bilingual brain, the similarities and differences that occur in language processing and comprehension. Finally, I covered which areas of the brain are designated for each language for bilinguals. So for example, when a bilingual hears a word in one of the languages they are fluent in, their brain will first sort the word by its definition, then its language, in comparison to monolinguals whose brains simply do not have that function. So this topic is of interest to me due to personal reasons and curiosity about languages around the world and what the implications and advantages are of being bilingual today. And obviously it's stressed very hard, like the advantages of being it, like, you know, most students have to take a second language in school. Like, as I said before, bilinguals are becoming more numerous. And with the increasing popularity of bilingualism spreading globally, I'm certain that there will be more studies done on the bilingual brain. Okay. Do I do Q&A or did I miss that part?
We've been doing Q&A, so I've been asking questions of everyone else, but I can ask a couple questions to you because we're here. I was curious to know if you studied, I mean, I've obviously heard you hear things in kind of public or the common lore, and one of the things that I've heard about is when children are exposed to languages early on, like before age 5, like did you encounter any studies that show that bilingualism from an early age, that the areas of the brain that get encoded are different than when you learn languages past, and like when you're, you know, adult or in high school or whatever? Like, are there different sort of brain patterns that arise?
Yeah, so the L2 and L1, which I like briefly went over. So basically what it is the speaker's first language and the speaker's second language. And in that section, I read a lot of articles, like mainly about why learning second languages or multiple languages when you're children is easier. It's because, like, obviously your brain is still malleable and you're still learning lots of things. And it's significant. It's almost 4 times easier for children to learn languages than it is for anybody past adolescence.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Well, thank you. So again, I'd love to open up the floor to any questions that either students have for each other or other people who are on the call have for the students. You can type your Q&A into the question box, or feel free to unmute yourself. Any questions? Okay, well, we can go ahead and close the session then. Once again, oh, did somebody raise their hand? I don't know. Let's see. Anyway, I'm sorry if I missed it. Anyway, I just wanted to thank everyone again for joining this. Oh, I have a question. Nilesh, go ahead and ask your question.
So I was just wondering about the indigenous medicines. So what sort of scientific research is there to back that hypothesis?
Could you elaborate on your question?
Yeah. So it just seems like considering the spiritual element, if it's not really grounded by any sort of scientific research, are you saying we need to explore that, or is there already research supporting it?
Oh, so in my paper, I talk about how, yeah, it's kind of that we should explore that field of medicine, and that it may result in some interesting findings. And I also talk about how it's not just about traditional medicine, it's more about how we can intertwine traditional medicine with modern medicine and find more solutions to modern medical problems.
Okay. Thank you so much again, everyone, for joining. This was a great session, and congratulations to all of our scholars on excellent work. I hope that you can continue taking your passion into the next phases of your education and your career. And I hope you all feel really proud of the work you've done. It's very challenging to do independent research, and congratulations again to all of you. Have a really great rest of your Saturday.